right, let's get started. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today for Lean Bites. My name is Jacqueline Overton and I'm on the marketing team here at Lean Techniques. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're so glad you could join us. Lean Bites are short 16-minute talks where we work to share simple, practical tips and techniques you can start applying within your organization today. So I'm really looking forward to today's Lean Bites. We have Peter Chodakowski, a delivery and product consultant at Lean Techniques, here with us. He'll be sharing more about how platform teams can embrace product principles to drive impact and reinforce a great customer experience. So if you have any questions throughout today's talk, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll either work to address them at the end or in our follow-up email afterwards. So I think that's all for my housekeeping, but with that, let's get started. Peter, I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining. We talk about embracing product on platform teams. We have a little agenda here. So we're going to talk about the different types of teams we find in an organization. We'll talk a little bit about customers. What is a customer? What's an internal customer? Why there's no such thing as an internal customer from my perspective. Kind of the pivot we want to make mentally because of that. And then what you should do, I want to make sure you go away from here with some practical things you can put in place right away. So to start with different types of teams, there are really four basic team topologies, and these are outlined in the book that you see there at the bottom of the screen. It's called Team Topologies, Organizing Business and Technology Teams for Fast Flow. It talks about the four different teams that we're going to go through here in a second, as well as three different interaction modes between them. Really a good book for organizing your departments. The first team type we want to talk about is a stream-aligned team. This is the primary team type that you'll find in an organization, and that is a team that's aligned to a single valuable stream of work. This could be a single product or a single service. It could be a single user journey or even just a user persona. This is the team that is closest to the customer, the external customer. It's an external facing team. Then we have three additional ones. We have an enabling team. They help these stream-aligned teams gain missing capabilities. They help them to deliver working software more reliably, more sustainably. So they do things like take on research. They might do trials, proofs of concept of new technologies. They help set up best practices, standards, and so on. All of that aimed at helping these stream-aligned teams be more effective. We also have complicated subsystem teams, a little bit of a wordy title, but these are very specialized teams. They rely very heavily on a depth of knowledge that maybe a more well-rounded team might not have. With a bunch of generalists, they tend to be specialized, such as proprietary mathematical models, real-time trading algorithms, facial recognition, AI, and so on. So they require a greater depth of knowledge on those teams. And finally, we have platform teams. They reduce the cognitive load of stream-aligned teams. They offload some of the lower-level detailed knowledge that you might need for things like provisioning infrastructure, application monitoring, deploying applications, and so on. Their main goal is to provide easy-to-consume services. So the three teams on the right of the slide, they're enabling complicated subsystem and platform. Their whole purpose is to reduce the burden on the stream-aligned teams. And so their whole goal is to, they look at the stream-aligned team normally like as their customer, right? Because it's a sort of natural thing to look at them as consumers of what they're doing. But really, customers aren't necessarily internal. So I want to look a little bit at what customers actually are. And so it's pretty simple, I think. I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence here. A customer is somebody who purchases goods or services from a business, right? That's really basic, kind of a textbook definition. They are the primary driver of revenue into the business. And the goal of a business, right, is to make money. And customers are the people who enable us to do that. and they're typically independent of the company. So they are not dependent on any one company's existence to make their purchases. They can find other suppliers if they want to. They can be loyal to your company or not. Think of Apple customers or Android customers, and they're sort of rabid fan bases there. Customers can sometimes purchase impulsively. They can shop for discounts. Some are driven by needs, and some just wander around and never actually buy anything. And maybe that makes them not really a customer. But the bottom line is customers have autonomy, right, to decide from whom they'll purchase, when they're going to purchase, what they're going to purchase, and so on. And so when we lay this aside alongside the idea of an internal customer, I think we run into a few problems. So first and foremost, internal customers or other departments or teams don't actually pay for the services of another department, right? They're not creating revenue for the company. Additionally, your team isn't its own company, right? You're not creating revenue that your team keeps and puts in your pocket at the end of the day. Internal customers don't typically have freedom of choice, right? They can't easily select a new supplier. That's not to say that companies haven't gone to an extreme and replaced an internal IT team with like an offshore team or something. But that's not the norm. Then on top of this, the customer and supplier relationship really is asymmetrical and it's transactional. And this is where I think I have the biggest problem with it, because we create a few organizational culture downsides that I think harm the overall performance of our orgs. First, it undermines a collaborative, team-oriented culture. We should really be seeing our companies as one team. Most of the time, we have to fight against this idea of the business and IT, right? And this just reinforces that separation within our company, but we want to build things together. We want to contribute jointly to a company's success. Viewing other teams as internal customers also diffuses responsibility. So instead of jointly solving problems, there could be a tendency to pass the buck or to expect others to just deliver as if they were an external vendor. The transactional nature can also lead to a focus on minimum requirements, kind of contract focus, rather than having constructive dialogue to find the best solutions. And it also increases bureaucracy and formal process, and that ultimately slows down innovation. So there's a little bit of a mental pivot that we need to take here. And the main pivot we need to make is that we need to redefine as an internal team who our customer is. And I would submit that our customer, based on the definition we just looked at, is the person or organization that's paying for our company's product or service. And so that affects our work in that we need to treat even our internal teams as product teams. And that means that we need a product strategy and a stronger product focus on those teams. So product strategy answers the question, how will your product delight customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways? And that's a quote from Gibson Biddle. He's a former VP or director of product at Netflix. There's a link there to his Medium page. I highly recommend it. Fantastic reading. But the bottom line is we need to reframe our work in terms of the product offering. So what should you do? And in truth, it's probably not too different from what you're already doing, but small changes can really go a long way. So the first thing we want to do is to take your current work and restate it from a product perspective, in whether it's a customer perspective, a differentiation perspective, or a margin affecting perspective. So we want to have a backlog of hypotheses for the work we're going to do. What effect do we think it's going to have for our customers? For example, when you're creating a backlog item for setting up new logging or new tracing tool, try to make a hypothesis about how that's going to impact the customer. It could be that the new tool enables quicker resolution of incidents. It could enable better root cause analysis, and those will both positively impact your product functionality going forward. The idea really is to get yourself and your team considering downstream effects of what you're doing and not just tackling like a never-ending to-do list. The second thing we want to do is prioritize with product focus. You want to prioritize your backlog according to how many criteria a piece of work is positively impacting. So we talked about the DHM model, delight customers, hard to copy, margin enhancing. We're normally really good at the margin enhancing ones. For example, we want to reduce AWS costs, right? So we might do that by shutting down unutilized resources, or we might limit log storage, right? Those are typical things we might do on a platform or internal team. But what about the stuff that's delighting customers or stuff that's hard to copy? You can also prioritize using the DORA metrics. I don't ever want to prescribe just one way to do things. So be pragmatic about it, what works best for you in your context. So if we look at DORA, we could prioritize according to how quickly a new feature will let teams, those stream-aligned teams, how quickly can they deploy? What's their lead time for getting a new feature or a new A/B test into production? How often do those things fail? Or when things do go wrong, how long does it take them to restore service? Those are all pretty decent proxies for the customer experience from a technical perspective. And finally, establish feedback loops. This is maybe the easiest thing to do on here. Just get your internal teams talking with actual customers. Have them come alongside your stream-aligned teams when they interview. Work with your CX team to learn how to interview customers, how to design interviews to help you understand how your work affects their journey. Build empathy for them on those teams. And then you take what you learn and you incorporate that into your hypothesis backlog. So this is all a loop. You just repeat this process over and over and over. And by way of an actual example, at a former client, I was on a team and we were tasked with creating an API to feed invoice data into a web portal. That web portal took the data, generated a PDF that the dealer could download. We ended up having a conversation with one of the dealers, and this was like a maybe 15-minute meeting. And we learned that due to their volume, they really preferred just to access the API directly. And we had no plans to do that at the time. So we made it available, ended up saving them hours a day. And that never would have happened if it weren't for that conversation, right? If we continued to look at the finance department as our internal customer, we gave them what they asked for, an API for the web portal, we would have missed unlocking that additional value for the customer. So there's a lot of power in a very simple thing. Here's an example of how you could use DHM to prioritize your backlog. I like really simple tools here, no fancy frameworks. So make a list of your different hypotheses, or if you're prioritizing at a feature level, does it delight customers? Is it hard to copy? Is it margin enhancing? And then work on the ones that, fit the most criteria. And again, you could swap this out for DORA if that's more relevant to you and your situation. So to wrap it up, it's really easy for internal facing teams to treat their colleagues as their customers. And that intent to provide great service and collaboration is noble, right? And I don't want to take away from that, but it can lead to some anti-patterns that we should avoid. By treating our work as a formal product and by keeping our focus on the real customers, we can ensure that what we prioritize is aligned with the organizational goals, and it continually improves the customer experience, increases our margins, and creates a competitive advantage for us. The changes are really small, but they can make an immense impact. Thank you. Any questions?
Doesn't look like we have any in the chat yet. Give people a second to, just in case they do, but if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Peter on LinkedIn or via email, or hit Lean Techniques up on LinkedIn as well, and we can help connect you. But I think we'll wrap up the Lean Bites. Thank you all for attending. We'll share out an email with the recording and access to the resources that Peter shared in this presentation. Look for that later this week. But we'd love to hear what you thought of today's session. There'll be a survey that pops up at the end once you close out of the Zoom, and we hope you'll take a minute to share your feedback. We also hope you'll join us next month. We've got Jim Lowry going to be talking about building more resilient teams and thriving in change. So that'll be the Tuesday following the 4th of July at 11:45 a.m. So be sure to check out our website or LinkedIn or click the link I just posted in the chat, and we'll see you next time. Thanks all.
Thank you.